Between 1953 and 1973, the Central Intelligence Agency funded 149 subprojects across 80 institutions in the United States and Canada, universities, hospitals, prisons, pharmaceutical companies. The collective budget in 1953 dollars was $25 million, roughly $300 million adjusted for inflation. The stated objective, contained in a memo signed by CIA Director Allen Dulles on April 13, 1953, was the development of techniques for covertly controlling an individual's behavior. The program was called MK Ultra. It lasted 20 years. Most of the subjects did not know they were part of it, and when it was over, the agency tried to make sure nobody else would know either. The origin is the Korean War. Between 1950 and 1953, American prisoners of war held in North Korean and Chinese camps began making public statements denouncing the United States, praising communism, and confessing to crimes they had not committed. The confessions were broadcast on radio. The press called it brainwashing. The CIA called it a national security threat. If the Soviets and Chinese had developed techniques to reprogram human belief systems, the United States needed to develop countermeasures. Or better, develop the techniques first and deploy them. That logic, documented in internal CIA memos declassified in 1977, was the foundation of MK Ultra. Individual predators follow a 5-phase hunting cycle because the predatory brain has one architecture. Institutions follow a different cycle: threat, panic, budget, program, cover-up, because institutional brains have one too. The man who ran MK Ultra was Sidney Gottlieb. He had a PhD in biochemistry from Caltech, a stutter, a clubfoot, and a goat farm in Virginia where he spent weekends practicing folk dancing. He joined the CIA in 1951 and was given control of the technical services staff, the division responsible for developing covert tools. Within 2 years, he had authorization to conduct experiments on unwitting subjects using any method he considered promising. No external oversight, no institutional review board, no requirement to document outcomes in a format accessible to anyone outside his division. Gottlieb was an organizational anomaly, a mid-level scientist with the budget of a department head and the accountability of nobody. His first priority was LSD. Lysergic acid diethylamide had been synthesized by Albert Hofmann at Sandoz Laboratories in 1938, and its psychoactive properties were discovered accidentally in 1943. Gottlieb believed LSD could be weaponized, used to disorient enemy agents during interrogation, to discredit political figures in public, or to create compliant subjects who would follow instructions without awareness. He authorized a series of experiments under the umbrella of MK Ultra, in which LSD was administered to CIA employees, military personnel, prisoners, mental patients, and members of the public. Some subjects were informed, many were not. Operation Midnight Climber was one of the more operationally creative subprojects. The CIA established safe houses in San Francisco and New York, hired sex workers to lure men back to the apartments, and dosed them with LSD without their knowledge, while agents observed from behind one-way mirrors. The stated purpose was to study the effects of LSD on unsuspecting subjects in a social setting. The operational purpose was to determine whether the drug could be used to extract information during or after sexual encounters. The program ran for over a decade. Frank Olson was a biochemist working for the Army Special Operations Division at Fort Detrick. In November 1953, Gottlieb invited Olson and several colleagues to a retreat at a cabin in Deep Creek Lodge, Maryland. During the retreat, Gottlieb spiked a bottle of Cointreau with LSD and served it after dinner. Olson consumed it without knowledge. Over the following days, his behavior changed dramatically. He became anxious, paranoid, and expressed a desire to leave his position. 9 days after the dosing, Olson fell from the 13th floor of the Statler Hotel in New York City. The CIA called it a suicide. Olson's family called it something else. In 1975, the Rockefeller Commission determined that Olson had been dosed without his consent. In 1994, a forensic pathologist hired by Olson's family examined the exhumed remains and found cranial injury consistent with a blow to the head before the fall. The case was reopened. It was never resolved. That was one subproject. There were 148 more. Subproject 68 was based at the Allen Memorial Institute, a psychiatric facility affiliated with McGill University in Montreal. It was run by Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron, president of the American Psychiatric Association, first chairman of the World Psychiatric Association, and a man whose professional credentials were matched only by his willingness to test ideas that no ethics board on earth would approve. Cameron's theory was called psychic driving. He believed that mental illness could be cured by erasing a patient's existing personality and rebuilding it from scratch. The erasure process involved three components: massive electroshock, up to 40 times the standard therapeutic dose, administered daily for 30 consecutive days; drug-induced sleep, patients sedated with barbiturates and kept unconscious for weeks at a time; and sensory overload, headphones taped to the patient's head playing a recorded message on a loop, sometimes for 16 hours a day, for weeks. Patients arrived at the Allen Memorial Institute seeking treatment for conditions like postpartum depression and anxiety disorders. They left, those who left, with memory loss, incontinence, inability to recognize family members, and in some cases, the cognitive function of a small child. Cameron documented the results. The CIA funded them. $25,000 per year for 4 years, routed through a front organization called the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology. Cameron never obtained informed consent from a single patient. Neat. In 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered the destruction of all MKUltra files. The timing was not coincidental. The Watergate investigation was accelerating. Congressional oversight was expanding. The Church Committee, a Senate committee investigating intelligence abuses, was beginning to ask questions about CIA domestic operations. Helms concluded that the MKUltra files, if discovered, would be politically catastrophic. The destruction order was executed. An estimated 90% of MKUltra documentation was shredded. A financial officer in a different department had filed duplicate copies of the budget records. 20,000 pages of MKUltra financial documents survived in a records warehouse because they had been misfiled under the wrong classification. They were discovered in 1977 during a Freedom of Information Act request. The declassification revealed the scope of the program, not the full operational details, which had been destroyed, but the financial skeleton: who was paid, how much, and for what category of work. The 20,000 pages are the reason we know about Subproject 68, about Operation Midnight Climber, about the LSD dosing programs. Everything else, the operational reports, the detailed outcomes, the identities of most subjects, is gone. The Senate Church Committee held hearings in 1975. Gottlieb testified. He acknowledged the program's existence. He described the general categories of research. He expressed what the committee transcripts describe as regret. He was not charged with a crime. No one involved in MKUltra was ever charged with a crime. Gottlieb retired, spent his final years volunteering at a hospice and raising goats, and died in 1999. Cameron died in 1967, 6 years before the destruction order, while climbing a mountain. He never testified. His patients sued the Canadian government in the 1980s. They received a settlement. No one admitted liability. Mr. Grimm found the budget line for Subproject 68. 4 years of funding, $25,000 per year, adjusted to approximately $200,000 in today's currency. That is what it cost to erase several dozen human personalities, less than the price of a modest house. 149 subprojects, 80 institutions, 20 years, $25 million, 0 convictions. The documents that survived were financial records, preserved by clerical error in a misfiled cabinet. The question that remains is not what MKUltra did. The surviving pages answer that in sufficient detail. The question is, what was in the other 90%? The pages that burned on schedule, in a building with no windows, on the order of a director who understood exactly what they contained. The program tried to break the human mind, with chemistry, electricity, and isolation. It required government funding, institutional infrastructure, and 2 decades of operational secrecy. What happens when the same result, a broken decision, a surrendered identity, a person doing exactly what someone else wants, requires nothing but a phone call and the right 3 sentences? The answer fits in your pocket, and it takes about 3 minutes.